Dear children, welcome to my first session of Chapter 15, Data Manipulation through SQL. The database management system is an application software for users to interact with the database. But users need not always be human users. They can be other programs and applications also. In this chapter, you will learn how Python program can interact with the database using SQLite. What is SQLite? SQLite is a simple relational database system. SQLite saves its data in regular data files. What are the advantages of SQLite? SQLite can be embedded in applications instead of using a separate database server program such as MySQL or Oracle. SQLite is fast, flexible, and rigorously tested, making it easier to work. Python has a native library for SQLite. You have to follow 3 steps to use SQLite in your Python program. The first step is import SQLite 3. Second step, create a connection using connect method and pass the name of the database file. For example, connection is equal to SQLite3.connect within parenthesis school.db, which should be as a string. By this statement, I have created a connection using the connect method and I have passed the name of the database file. Here the name of my database file is school.db. The third step is to set the cursor object. Cursor is equal to connection.cursor. Here the cursor on the left hand side is the cursor object. The cursor object is a control structure to traverse and fetch the records in a database. Cursor object is used for doing all SQL commands. Next, I will show you how to write the Python program using SQLite. In that, the first step is creating a database using SQLite. The Python code to create a database. You have to follow the 3 steps which I showed you earlier. The first step is import SQLite 3. The second step is to establish a connection between SQLite 3 and your database, which is written as connection is equal to SQLite3.connect and within parentheses the name of your database file, which is school.db. The third step is to create a cursor object by using the cursor method. Cursor is equal to connection.cursor and parentheses. So these 3 statements will create a database school.db. After having created the database, our next step is to create a table. For creating a table, you have to write cursor.execute and within parentheses the SQL command. Place the SQL command within double quotes or triple quotes. Now I want to create a table. So you recall the syntax for creating a table which you learned in SQL in chapter 12. Create table student is an SQL command to create a table with the name student. This SQL command you have to insert here in the place of SQL command, that is as a parameter for the execute function. So look at this like this. You can write the SQL command here directly in the execute function itself, or if you think it is more cluttered here, you can store this SQL command in another variable like this. For example, s is equal to and the entire SQL command within quotes. And then in cursor.execute, you just write yes. You can follow any of the methods. That is, you can write the SQL command directly here in the execute function itself, or you can store it in an object and then write the name of the object over here. Having created the table, our next task is to add the records. For adding records, you have to use the insert command of SQL, which is written as insert into student values and within parentheses the values corresponding to the columns of your table. And this SQL command I have to give as parameter to the execute function as follows: cursor.execute and within parentheses and within double quotes. To insert the second record, you write cursor.execute and within parentheses and within double quotes, insert into student values within brackets the next set of values. In this manner, you can insert any number of records to your student table. Therefore, the insert command is used to populate the table. Populate the table means to insert a number of records to the table. Next, we will see the meaning of the constraint primary key along with the integer data type, integer primary key. When you give integer primary key for a column, you are allowed to give null values for this column. That is, the value 101 I can replace with null. Similarly, 102 I can replace with null. What is the significance of giving null as the value for admission number? Null will be automatically converted into an integer, which will be one larger than the highest value so far in that column. So in the first record, even though I give null for admission number, it will be converted into the integer 1. And the null in the second record will be automatically taken as 2. That is, it will be one larger than the highest value so far in that column. After populating the table, to save the changes made to the database, you have to use the commit method, which is written as connection.commit parenthesis. And finally, you can close the database by giving connection.close followed by parenthesis. This Python program creates a database called school.db, and then within the database creates a table with the name student, and in that table we have inserted 2 records. Next, we will see how to display records from a database table. For that, as usual, you write the first 3 statements that establishes the connection with the school database, school.db. And then in the cursor.execute command, you write the SQL statement which will display the records. Recall that to display the records in SQL, the command is select. So within double quotes, you write select asterisk from student semicolon. After giving the select command like this, you have to fetch and store all the records in an object. Here I take an object called records is equal to cursor.fetch all. So use the fetch all method to fetch all the records from the student table. The fetch all method fetches all the records from the student table and stores in this object records. The records object will be actually a list of tuples. Next, we have to print the records by using the print statement. To print each record in a separate line, then you give the print statement within a for loop as follows: for I in records colon print I. This program will give the following output. You can see that each record is printed in a separate line. each record is a tuple. So here this records object is a list of tuples, and from this list each tuple is printed by the print statement. Take the statement records is equal to cursor.fetchAll. You can also use fetch one or fetch many in the place of fetch all. Let us see the difference between fetch one, fetch many and fetch all methods of cursor object. The fetch one method returns the next row of the result set or none if there are no rows left. That is, the fetch one method will fetch only the next row. Only one row, that too the next row from the result set. The fetch many method returns the next n number of rows of the result set. To use fetch many, you should write as cursor.fetchMany n. Here n denotes the number of rows to be fetched. It can be 3 rows or 5 rows from the table. Cursor.fetchAll. The fetchAll method fetches all the rows from the database table. Next, I will show you examples for each of them. First, the fetch one method. In this program, they have used fetch one method. Res is equal to cursor.fetch1. The fetch one method will fetch the first row in this case and store in res, and print res will give the following output. That is, the first row of the table is printed. Fetch many. Result is equal to cursor.fetchMany of 3. Here the fetch many method will fetch the first 3 records from the table. So print result will give the output as follows. Look at the output. Each record is a tuple and all the records are within a list. So this is a list of tuples. Print result prints all the records consecutively together. If you want each record in a separate line, then you replace print result with print asterisk result, comma, sep is equal to new line. Now this print statement will give the output as follows. You can see that each record is in a separate line and each record is a tuple. This session you learned how to write Python program to interact with the database using SQLite 3. In my next session, I will teach you some clauses in SQL, clauses like distinct, where, group by, order by, having in the Python program. That's all in this session. Thank you, children.